Whilst virtual reality is an area already mature in some respects, there has been a surprisingly low number of listed companies in the UK that actually offer investors exposure to what is a potentially exponential growth area. EVR Holdings has perhaps been the only real option in recent times, and despite them having agreements with significant players like Warner Music, Sony Music, and actually having a real chance to offer an alternative revenue stream to recording artists, with a market cap of £145 million and no historical revenue, whilst that's not a bad thing, it's pretty clear to see that appetite for virtual reality exposure is high amongst investors. Now, we've recently assisted at Shard with both raising money for and investing into virtual reality education holdings as part of their admission to AIM at the start of this week. They first listed on Monday. Shard clients, both institutional and retail, they've successfully completed a significantly oversubscribed funding to raise £6 million. That's given them a market capitalisation at admission of £19.3 million. Trading started pretty well. They listed at 10p, current price is 12p, so they're up around 20%. And I suppose the attraction within the educational space is that it delivers a more personal and inclusive learning experience with high levels of engagement and knowledge retention. If you can think back to a time when you've either been at university or sat in a classroom, you've got a guy at the front or a lady at the front talking to you, and it's generally predominantly a one-way experience. There are questions and answers perhaps, but it's quite hard to retain knowledge if your mind drifts off and you start thinking about something else. With a virtual reality experience, it's much more immersive. The experience is far richer, and the expectation is that knowledge retention and completion of courses, which a lot of these distance learning courses, particularly for finance, accountancy, where you have to be self-motivated to study, textbooks and online video recorded sessions, they're impersonal, and less than 15% of people actually go on to complete those courses. The hope is that with a virtual reality experience, that will change. Specifically related to the VR education market, global revenues are forecast to increase significantly, with around 55% compound annual growth rate, and that's largely been driven by innovation and product launches, specifically for virtual reality headsets and goggles. Facebook, in fact, have got a target of getting 1 billion people exposed to virtual reality in the home by 2020. And they've recently broadcast, actually, that their F8 conference in May, they actually expect to announce their biggest augmented reality and virtual reality news to date. The key driver really is the prices of these headsets. They're decreasing all of the time. The Facebook Oculus Go is now priced at under $200, and when you consider that only a few years ago these were costing several £1,000s, it's not hard to see why Zuckerberg and co think that the growth will spike. Virtual reality education are partnering with leading education institutions and corporate trainers to actually provide content within their Engage platform. Now, certainly a bit presumptuous to compare it to YouTube, given its size, but you almost think of it as a YouTube for educational VR content, so a very specific niche. Collaborations that they've had so far include Oxford University, they've done some work with the BBC, Royal College of Surgeons, and the idea is that if they bring on top quality content, that will attract further high quality content. And they've been approached by many other content providers who actually wish to use the platform, and a lot of these inquiries have been inbound. So part of the reason for raising this money is to build a team that can cope with those inquiries and actually do some external selling as well. To provide some short-term revenue and further content, one of the things that they've done is develop several showcase VR experiences that drive people to the platform. They did a Apollo 11 moon landing, won quite a lot of awards. It's available to download on Oculus, Steam, HTC's Viveport platform, and also the PlayStation Store. And they've actually sold 100,000 copies of that so far, generating over €1 million of revenue. And they've got HD updates planned for the first half of this year, and they're also going to be selling it into China as well. And when you consider that the company have developed this alongside 2 other showcase experiences on 1.3 million euros worth of cost, clearly having £1 million back already is very positive. The second showcase that they're going to release is their Titanic experience. Now, the prototype of that has actually already launched in November at the Titanic Museum in Belfast, but there is a 6-hour version that launches in the second half of this year on all the virtual reality platforms, and that'll be available to buy in exactly the same way that the moon landing was available to buy the first time around. But that's a fully immersive experience where you walk on the Titanic, have a look through all of the rooms. One of the survivors, Survivor 7, a lady, talks through the experience and what it felt like to be on the Titanic, what happened during the sinking, and the various different problems that they had with boats, etc. And then you get a full reconstruction on the seabed of the shipwreck that you can swim around and you can explore the whole thing. And yeah, that's going to be, the Titanic's got a huge following. So we're expecting both that and also the history of space exploration, which is their third showcase experience, to have their revenues eclipse that of the Apollo 11 moon landing that clearly has done so well so far. Because of the success of the Apollo 11 showcase and the use of audio in the Titanic experience that was so successful, the BBC have actually been in touch with VR Education to deliver content onto Engage. Now, we're hoping for a finalised agreement with them this year, but one of the things that they're looking to do is collaborate to celebrate 100 years of the Royal Air Force. Now, the Royal Air Force had sound recorders on the Lancaster bombing raids over Berlin in 1945. And what they'd like to do is recreate a Lancaster bomber experience using that audio as a celebration of history and of the success of the Royal Air Force. There are also going to be 10 free lectures from Oxford University that are going to be added to the platform, so that should give them some more runway with new customers. The fundraise is going to enable them to build the sales and marketing team to actually promote and engage with the content owners and providers to build this library for the Engage platform. And it's well worth remembering that the vast majority of historical inquiries have actually been inbound because of the success of previous work. In fact, HTC, they use the VR Education showcases to demonstrate their headsets. So if you go to a show, it's quite often HTC using their content to demonstrate the abilities of the headsets. But this fundraise should give them over 2 years worth of financial runway based on their current burn rate. We think they're in a leading position within the VR education space. The engagement with content providers is high, and we're quite looking forward to progress over the coming year. One thing that we haven't already talked about is the potential for corporate education. McDonald's, for example, trade 10,000 people a year on their grilling stations. With a high volume of activity and news flow expected from them, along with further advancements in technology and interest in virtual reality, we hope that VR education continue to provide growth for our shareholders and the market alike.